Today on the 10-12 podcast, we're making picks for every Week 4 game in the Big 12 on the schedule with Chase A. Kiddy of BetMGM and Brett Gibbons of The Lines. That includes Arizona State at Texas Tech, Kansas State at BYU, Kansas at West Virginia, and Houston has a new naming rights for their stadium and why it should probably start a rivalry with UCF.
The NFL season is finally here, so make sure you're ready with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. It gives you the most live NFL games all in one place, exactly what you need to make your Sundays more magical. Sign up today at youtube.com/Sunday Ticket. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
I'm not going back to college to be your friend. I'm going so I can get Uber One for students. It saves you on Uber and Uber Eats. I'm there for $0 delivery fee on cheeseburgers, up to 10% off smoothies, and 6% Uber cash back on rides. Just to be clear, I'm there for savings, not whatever you think college is for.
Get Uber One for students, a membership to save on Uber and Uber Eats. With deals this good, everyone wants to be a student. Join for just $4.99 a month. Savings may vary. Eligibility and member terms apply.
Welcome to the 10-12, the podcast that covers all 16 teams in the Big 12 Conference. We are the flagship show of the 10-12 Network. Find every show on the network at 1012network.com. And of course, we are partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I'm your host, Phillip Slavin. Thank you for joining us for our picks episode this week. You know what? I'm excited that we have fewer games to pick because in theory, this will be a shorter podcast, but it never fails that just because the number of picks go down doesn't mean that we talk less. We just talk more about each game individually because there's less pressure to get through them quickly. So I'm sure this episode with like 8 picks will still take an hour and a half somehow, some way. That's fine. I'm sure it'll be great content. I thank you for listening. Do us a favor, however you are listening, whether it's YouTube, where you can leave us a comment and a thumbs up and subscribe. If it's iTunes, leave us a positive review and 5 stars. I would really appreciate it. I hope, again, that today's guest doesn't lead to anyone leaving us a 1-star review just because we brought them on. That would be, I really hope nobody hates Brett quite that much. But joining us today, as he is every week for our Picks Pod, he is the man at MGM, Chase A. Kiddy. Chase, welcome back, man.
Man at MGM, we might have to trademark that. Hey, it's good to be here after a soul-crushing loss in the backyard brawl. I'm dead inside. How are you, Phillip?
I'm good. I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm good. My dynasty fantasy football teams have all been ravaged by injury, but I don't think anybody wants to hear me talk about my dynasty team, so we'll move on from that. That Brett guy that I mentioned that I hope no one hates, he is Brett Gibbons of The Lines. Brett, welcome back to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. About that no hate, you just haven't seen the YouTube comment section. There's a lot of it there. But yeah, hopefully nobody listening here hates me too much from the next hour or so that I'll be talking with you guys. Happy to be back.
I like your backyard brawl towel that you have hanging behind you. If Chase hadn't seen that one yet, but is it for the wrong? Yeah, I was about to say, wait a second, is that the wrong team? It's the wrong team.
It's from I went to the backyard brawl in 2022. Where Pitt. Sorry, Chase, you might want to take your headphones off for this one. Had that.
Well, thanks for coming, Brett. It's great to hear from you. I think actually we have another guest lined up, Phillip. We have a backup guest.
Chase is gonna be the one leaving the 1-star review on the podcast now. So
hey, to be fair, I did make a return trip to Morgantown, not for the backyard brawl, but for their near clutching victory from the hands of defeat or vice versa against Baylor later that year. And I'll tell you what, Morgantown was one of my absolute favorite places to ever see a football game. Hospitable as can be.
Morgantown's a good time. Yep.
Brett has been to many a college football venue. So if you've got questions about him, hit Brett up. He will tell you. I do want to shout out a couple of people who left us a couple of nice reviews. So thank you very much to Ema Zoomer. Phillip has done a great job and hosts the best Big 12 show out there. Aw. You're sweet. Not only does he present good information and opinions, but brings on a ton of different voices to add to the discourse. Show never gets stale. 5 out of 5 would and do recommend. Also to All Night, KNIGHT. Can't imagine how they get it done at 10-12. Full year coverage, all of your favorite sports, knowledgeable yet still fun. 10-12 is the best when it comes to year-round multi-sport Big 12 podcasts. Love these shows. Give them a listen. Go Knights. Thank you very much to all of you. And again, if you want to leave us a positive review, we would greatly appreciate it. It really does help the show out. We work hard here. And so we just, a nice word is a nice thing. Before we get to our picks, Houston Stadium name change coming. TDECU or TDECU. I don't really know if we have a pronunciation for that, who owns the naming rights for Houston Stadium, is merging with Space City Credit Union to form Space City Financial. Houston's football stadium will change its name to Space City Financial Stadium in 2025. So we're all just going to call it Space City, which is awesome. And also, I just pointed out on Twitter that it's time for Houston and UCF to have a rivalry that we will call the Space Race, because that's a perfect, as it was described to me as an S tier. I'm an old, so I think I understand the whole S-tier system. I don't game much anymore, so forgive me, but I see the graphics that get made. And then it turned into a lot of Houston and UCF fans arguing in the comment section that this is not a rivalry. And then there were a couple other tweets, and people continued to respond and complain that this is not a rivalry. And then they started arguing with each other about all sorts of different things between Houston and UCF. And Houston has no fans, and UCF made up a national championship, and blah, 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 blah. The oldies that never quite get old. To which I reply, y'all, that sounds like a rivalry to me. And I'm not trying to force a rivalry on you, okay? I understand. But also, it's not a terrible thing to just make up fun statues that people get to have as trophies when you beat somebody. And so if someone wants to get us like a real actual moon rock that we can then mount to a base and call the Space Race, that would be great.
What about a statue of Elton John?
Oh, that's good. That's very good. I like that. For those of you who are younger who listen to this show, Elton John is a pop star from back in the day. He still sings now. But he sang a song called Rocket Man. Ask your parents. Okay, ask your parents. They'll know all about it. Look, every podcast is someone's first, be that just the first time they've turned into it or the first time they've ever listened to a podcast because they're now old enough to find podcasts. So you just never know. I like that. Again, I'm not trying to force rivalries. I'm just trying to have fun. And it led to, y'all, the Big 12 the last few weeks since we started really getting like conference games going. UCF and TCU last week, who had never played each other before ever in the history of college football, got really creative at going at each other on Twitter. And then, as Jamie mentioned, UCF, who has one of the best social media brands out there, made a TCU version of the weird psychedelic frog Hypno-frog video about them beating TCU, and it was incredible. And now, y'all, it just keeps coming. Also, UCF, the day after Houston announces they're going to change the stadium name to Space City Financial Stadium, UCF drops their space uniforms for this season the next day, which is perfect. Just like, oh yeah, we'll show you space. You guys just whatever. I love it. Don't tell me it's not a rivalry. Just let it be. Let it be one. Okay, it's more fun that way. And also, it's just that the new Big 12 is fun. Utah and OSU fans are going at it. Like BYU and Kansas State fans are going at it, which is hilarious. So I like how Kansas State fans are both defending BYU against Utah fans being jerks, and while simultaneously also making fun of BYU fans. It is an art form that the Big 12 continues to perfect of being the most online fan bases in college football. Okay, we'll move on from there. Dead air is fine. I want to give everyone an opportunity. So let's.
I think I blew my payload on the Elton John trophy.
That was good. No, that was a good payload. Haha, I got the pun. Okay, yeah. Let's look back at last week. Chase, I'll say this: our guest didn't do better than us last week. You and I both went 6-8, so guess what? We're still tied. And our good friend Miles went 5-9. Let's run through it. Miles, well, we're about you and I. Chase, you hit on UNLV plus 7.5 versus Kansas. Hit on the OSU minus 18.5 versus Tulsa. Hit on Utah State plus 20.5 versus Utah. Hit on the under 41.5 in Baylor Air Force. Hit on BYU minus 10.5 versus Wyoming, and hit on Indiana minus 3 versus UCLA, and that one covered easily. The misses were Texas State plus 1.5. Over 59.5 in Kansas State, Arizona. Miami of Ohio plus 3.5. UNT plus 9.5 for Texas Tech. That wasn't close. West Virginia minus 1.5 in the backyard brawl. UCF minus 2.5. Wait, what?
I was going to say they were plus 2.5, right?
I got this backwards because I think, I sometimes I have to do this. I'm 3 small kids. That's all I'm going to say. 3 small kids. I got to update this. You got UCF plus minus 2.5. You were good there. That's a good one. That's a win for you. Colorado State plus 7.5 versus Colorado, and Rice plus 4.5 versus Houston. So actually, you went 7-7 last week, not 6-8. So congrats. So you are at 15-20.
C's get degrees.
That's right. It works. That's good. Congrats. I hit on Arizona State minus 1, under 62.5 on OSU Tulsa, Texas Tech minus 9.5, Colorado minus 6.5, and the under 44.5 in Rice Houston. Missed on the over 57.5 in Kansas UNLV. Missed on Arizona plus 7.5. Missed on Miami of Ohio plus 3.5. Missed on, all these unders that failed me. Under 64.5 in West Virginia Pitt. Under 44.5 in Utah State. TCU plus 2.5. That was on my side for a while. Air Force plus 16. I was good until the second half of that game. Under 40.5 in BYU Wyoming, and Kentucky under 9.5 versus Michigan or versus Georgia. They scored 12 in a really I don't know what's happened to dumb game, because of course they did. Because I won't go anywhere near Kentucky the rest of the season. I've learned my lesson 2 straight weeks. I've done something in relation to Kentucky, and I got it wrong 2 straight weeks, so I'll just stay away.
They'll play an 8-point game with Ohio this week too. Ugh. Just to remind you.
Hey, coming off of a emotional Georgia loss and a physical South Carolina loss, they got a bye week, and the only thing that stands in the way are those pesky Ohio Bobcats, who, by the way, run the football pretty well and aren't so bad. I actually am on Ohio plus 20 this week.
I was too. I was going to be a column pick for me until I saw that Kentucky's like 27-6 ATS against the MAC the last 33 games. And I was like, I might stay away from that one. But I like the fundamentals of that. I'm with you.
This is fun. Okay. I'm not touching Kentucky. Nothing you can say will make me go anywhere near Kentucky the rest of the season. I do try to learn my lessons as best as I can. Hopefully twice is enough. All right. So any final thoughts on last week, Chase?
I don't have anything to add other than blowing a 10-point lead with 4 minutes left is makes me very sad. And I don't ascribe that to the coaching staff nearly as much as maybe some other people in the West Virginia community do. But I certainly share their frustration in the outcome, and that's really the only thing I can focus on coming off week 3.
Fair enough. Brett, any thoughts on Big 12 so far this season?
It didn't really change the way I saw the conference as a whole, but the nice thing is I think we learned about 2 teams in particular. But we'll get into that when we talk about the games later.
Ooh, I like that. That's called a tease, kids. That's what we call a tease in the biz, in the industry. Okay. Y'all ready to make some picks for this week?
Traveling to see your fave sports team is cool, but traveling with Amex Platinum for the big game is even better.
Right this way.
With access to dedicated card member entrances at select events, you can skip the line.
And one.
And with access to the Centurion Lounge,
he shoots a 3.
You can catch the next game on the way home. That's the powerful backing of American Express. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex. Card member entrance access not limited to Amex Platinum Card.
Dial it up.
Yep.
Thank you. I was seeing head nods. I was like, yes, podcasting, a visual medium. Excellent. All right, let's do this the same way we do it every week, by going in chronological order. We start things off in Ohio at Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati. the Bearcats hosting Houston at 11 a.m. on FS1. This one is interesting. Chase, I want your thoughts on this because we've already seen the line here that I believe opened at like Cincinnati -5.5 has dropped down to Cincinnati -3.5. Now, is this it was opening line stuff, they put it out there to see what would happen and this is what they meant, or is there an actual reason for this line movement?
No, this is steaming toward Houston off of market action. And you know, my early inclination, I guess I'll just go straight into sort of my pick here because it kind of lines up with the question you're asking.
Sure.
My early inclination was, you know, Houston's moving in the right direction. I like the vibes there a little better. 5.5 is, you know, it's not the fattest number in the world, but like that's an interesting, it's an interesting zone to put this spread in. And the feeling for me was that Houston was the right side here. Then you start to see the market moving toward Houston, which is, you know, this is not some big public betting target, right? This line moves 2 points in this random noon game between two teams near the bottom of the Big 12, probably. Like, that's probably professional action. Now, it's fair to observe that the 2 points between 5.5 and 3.5 are not the same as the 2 points between, I don't know, let's say like 17 and 20. Like not all points are created equal. But I like Houston plus the points here. I think people saw the Cougars get smashed pretty good by UNLV in week 1, and that created, you know, that first data point where the market, I think even we came on after week 1 and we're like, yikes, that's a rough way to start. But if you've watched what Houston has done since then, it does seem like Willie Fritz kind of has the hot fix dialed up. And look, this is not going to be like a good team that finishes in the top half of the standings and competes for any kind of championship this year. I think we all understand that. But I do think it's going in the correct direction and it's going pretty fast. And I like that feeling more so than not really knowing what Cincinnati is or where they're going. And I've said nice things about Sorsby. I like Sorsby, but overall, I think I like the directionality of Houston and having a good number at 3.5, a little more than I would like laying an advantage with a Cincinnati team that I don't quite know what a lot of it is.
That's fair. That's fair. Before we get to Brett, like I mentioned, obviously 3.5 is the line. Total is about 46.5. That has also come down from opening market. Brett, we've already got Chase's pick. What would you like here, sir?
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree here. And not only is the move from 5.5 to 3.5 not the same as some other numbers, but it's not even as significant as a move from 3.5 to 3. We're talking about an 11% move from 5.5 to 3.5 and a 17% move with just a hook. Or if you really want to move it through 2.5, I don't think that's going to happen. You know, people are really going to roll their eyes at Houston's win over Rice, but they absolutely crushed them in every facet of the game. I know Rice isn't that good that year, but look, if it's going to take time to get things right, and they are moving in the right direction, like you said, I'd like to see Donovan Smith not hold on to the football so long. Let's be a little bit more decisive, get out of there, or decide to run. I think maybe the injury from last year is kind of hindering him, and I don't know if I want to tuck and run, but, you know, anything's really an improvement on week 1. But that loss to UNLV, it's not looking all that bad, right? UNLV is a good football team objectively, and they lost to Oklahoma. You know, those are the 2 data points that we have. And if you're kind of looking like, well, I'm kind of hesitant that they lost to the Rebels, that's fine. UNLV is a strong contender to be the Group of Five's representative in the playoff later on. Maybe they lose to two very, very, very good teams. I like Houston outright to win. To be honest, I'm more conservative taking the plus 3.5 because it's a great number. I do like that. Nipper, it's a very difficult place to play, no doubt about it. But yeah, I think Houston is moving in the right direction. Cincinnati's kind of treading water. And I really think that UNLV loss, which is really dragging them down in the market, isn't all that bad. They lost to a good football team in their first game under a completely new regime. So yeah, give me Houston plus 3.5 here. All
right. You guys agree. I'll run through the numbers. SP Plus, Cincinnati minus 6.3. Tishu, Cincinnati minus 1. FEI, Cincinnati minus 4.6. Beta, Cincinnati by 0.34. Parker, Houston by 1.13. Room 44, Cincinnati minus 4.6. And Kelly Ford has Cincinnati with a 61% chance to win. So pretty much everything is on Cincinnati here, which I get. As Chase mentioned, I also have been impressed by Sorsby through the first 3 weeks of the season. He's thrown 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, ranks 4th amongst the Big 12 quarterbacks in ESPN QBR at 75.4. He has been good. The end of that Pitt game, like, he got hurt, and he was less effective after he got hurt. He was much better again last week. I don't trust Cincinnati. But I really don't trust Houston's offense. Like, I understand what they did last week, and we have talked about Donovan Smith enough times to be like, Donovan Smith's got to have great games where you're like, there's that guy somebody 2 years ago said was going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft, and then he's going to follow that up with a bad game because he is consistently inconsistent. And so I definitely don't expect something from him after last week's performance to be good this year. Now, maybe we have a new Donovan Smith because we have a new coaching staff, and that was Dana Holgerson, and this is Willie Fritz. Maybe, but I'm not ready to believe in that until I've seen it. I'm going to need some more evidence before I'm there. However, I do really like Houston's defense. I like Houston's defense. I like what we saw from Rice. I like what we saw. I understand the OU game. Like, it's a weird data point. Maybe it's a little bit more about Oklahoma than Houston. I don't hold against them as much against UNLV because I think UNLV is good. I think the defense did a decent job against them. I like this Houston defense. I wish the total hadn't dropped so dang much because I really would have liked to have taken the under. 46.5 is really low. Like, it's a really low total. All the total projections are around there. SP Plus has a 56. The lowest is a 41 from Tishu, but they're all pretty much in there. A couple of 49s, a couple of 46s. I'm afraid to take the under in a game I think should go under. And totals have completely bit me this year. I cannot read them. I fear the consensus. I don't like it at 3 with the hook. That bothers me. I could absolutely see Cincinnati winning this by a field goal at home. But because since the consensus curse is my greatest fear, I'm just going to let you guys have this one. So I'll take Cincinnati to actually get the cover. I want the total. It's too low for me. I just don't think there's enough value left. But Cincinnati minus 3.5. At home, I think they'll do enough to get a 4 to 7 point win here. And I think that's the difference. Is this going to be a 3-point win or a 4-point win? That's kind of what I think happens here. In a low-scoring affair that probably ends up going way under, like 30 points, but oh well. All right. Next on the list. This is an interesting game. 2 teams, rough starts to the season, licking their wounds, looking for something positive. They're in Morgantown, West Virginia. The Mountaineers hosting Kansas, 11 a.m. on ESPN2. This should be. I'm very intrigued by this game. Very intrigued. There's a lot at stake here, I think, for both these teams and what's going to happen with them kind of moving forward. At the moment, West Virginia is a 2.5 point favorite. Total in this one's about 56.5, depending upon what you like. Brett, you are up first, sir. What would you like?
Yeah, this one's interesting that it hasn't gone to 3, and I do think that matters. That we haven't reached there with West Virginia yet, but. This is what I was teasing before. These are 2 teams that I think I kind of figured out what they are last week, and that's not very good. I don't know if either one is a very good football team, to be honest here. I know what I said about UNLV being a quality loss. I don't think Illinois is all that great, and Kansas, lost to them as well. So especially looking at Jalen Daniels, only 3 touchdowns, 6 picks on the year, 7 turnover-worthy throws in the last 2 games alone. No big-time graded throws by PFF. That's important, and it's not great. However, big injury here. West Virginia lost his starting defensive tackle. I think he's a pretty key cog to that stop unit. He's done for the whole season. Now, there's far too many turnovers from both teams. And what that tells me is we're getting a classic Big 12 game here in, who knows? Twitter's going to be dialed in, and it should be a lot of fun to watch. Kansas's the difference between those two, in my opinion, is Kansas's turnovers largely come down to decisions, aka Jalen Daniels throwing interceptions. West Virginia's, on the other hand, have come from a little bit of luck. They're putting the ball on the turf, but you can't deny that there's lucky bounces one way or another. And if they're not recovering their fumbles at a healthy 50-50 clip, as math would tell you, then there's a little bit of probably positive regression coming in here for the turnovers from West Virginia. Of course, that could be remedied by just don't put the ball on the deck to begin with. But you know what? I can't in good conscience come here and take Kansas plus 2.5 on the road. Morgantown, difficult place to play. I think this is really two teams that are very desperate. One coach, Neil Brown, that's starting to get a little desperate, maybe realizing that a 9-4 season last year isn't the regular watermark, that maybe he may have overproduced it when his seat was hot. But yeah, I think I have to take the Mountaineers minus the 2.5 here because of that number. Morgantown, pretty good place to play. And yeah, it's just two teams that I think just aren't very good this year.
Okay, let me run through the numbers, because this one, there's a couple this week where you just go, this one's interesting. SP Plus has Kansas minus 2.9. T-Shoe literally just had 0.0. No side there. FEI had West Virginia minus 3.3. Beta had West Virginia minus 1.23. Parker has Kansas minus 3.98. Room 44 has West Virginia minus 3.3. Kelly Ford gives West Virginia a 58% chance to win this one. I don't trust either team. You said that they're both bad. I just don't trust either team. Like there's not a side here I feel good about it. I want to trust Kansas more than I trust West Virginia right now. The problem is I don't trust Jalen Daniels. Like, Jalen Daniels' interceptions are killing Kansas. Kansas should probably be 3-0, but he keeps turning the ball over. That's why UNLA was able to win. That's why Illinois beat them. Like, Jalen Daniels continuing to throw interceptions is absolutely wrecking Kansas this season right now. He has not been good. It has not been good with Grimes. There was a tweet from Matt Tate at Mick Tait, who covers Kansas for Wave the Wheat. This one came out basically saying Grimes had met with media the other day. They had talked about how the Illinois loss might not have been rock bottom and that they might have to get all the way to the bottom to refocus and get going in the direction they need to go. Now, Matt Tate responded to that one in a tweet that no one caught, because you never catch the second tweet where you try to fix the thing you said the first time. He had a follow-up stating that Coach Grimes was referencing the outcome of the UNLV as being rock bottom, and that several Kansas players said Tuesday's practice was one of the best. Accountability was both high and done with greater intent. Blah, 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 blah. They're not gelling with the offense. Internally, things aren't. No one knows what the problem is what I'm coming away with. Is everyone's pointing fingers. No one knows what the problem is. Obviously, Jalen Daniels is not the Jalen Daniels we thought it would be, but the dude has a back injury and basically missed a whole season. Maybe we should have seen a little bit more of this coming, since they haven't really told us much about his health. I want to trust Kansas more. I actually think Kansas is the right side here, but I'm so afraid of Jalen Daniels throwing interceptions that it scares me. Kansas is tied for 129th out of 133 teams in college football in turnover margin at -2 per game. They've given the ball away 2 times this year and have only have 2 takeaways of their own. It's not good. I think Kansas is the right side. I love the idea of they're going to trade turnovers, but trading turnovers doesn't necessarily mean trading touchdowns, right? Like, just because you'd have turnovers back and forth, like, great, you have the ball. No, you have the ball. No, you have the ball. Like, this is one of those games where would it shock anyone if we saw 3 straight drives that ended with turnovers? I wouldn't be shocked at all. Like, I almost want to predict it, this game. All of this is to say that I actually think I'm going to ride with Kansas. I'm going to. And it's a hope that Jalen Daniels plays a cleaner game, because I think if Jalen Daniels plays a clean game, I trust Kansas a bit more. I kind of trust their defense more than because the defense has done a great job. It's not the defense's fault that Kansas is losing these games. I don't trust West Virginia's defense. I don't trust their secondary all that much. I'm going to take Kansas with this being less than a touchdown. I think Kansas can actually go on the road and get the outright win here. Chase?
Yeah, I actually have a lot on this game. I mean, Kansas, I think, let's start here. Zoomed out, what is West Virginia? I actually don't think this team is that much different than last year's team. I think the difference is last year's team was preposterously lucky, right? In terms of playing all these teams exactly when their quarterback was hurt. At the beginning of the year, you think, oh my God, this schedule is going to be brutal. By the end of the year, you're like, wow, that schedule is actually really easy. They got all the new teams. I think it was the game against UCF. They like blocked multiple field goals and then like win the game by a tight margin. Just there was so much like things that bounced their way. And coming into this season, I thought, I actually don't think this team is that much different than last year, but it would be shocking if they won 9 games again. Just because you don't get that much of a bounce. And I think we have seen that already, that sort of natural luck regression take place so far with West Virginia being 1-2 coming into Big 12 play. It feels like this game is, in Bill Simmons' parlance, what we would call a loser leaves town game, because you could see whoever loses this game, it really falling apart fast for them in terms of like where the team is mentally and emotionally. I think for the West Virginia side, it's more the coaching staff. I think for the Kansas side, it's more like the players and the confidence in Jalen Daniels. I agree with everything you guys have said. He's just been not very good so far. Like the decision making has not been good. So that's sort of how I'm thinking about the game. My eyes say you should take West Virginia. They do more things well. My brain says, to go back to something Brett said at the very beginning of this, the fact that this is 2.5, that it stayed 2.5, that it hasn't gone to 3 is pretty telling. That is the sports book tacitly taking a side with Phillip and the Kansas side. If you're willing to take that 2.5 money, people are going to be willing to lay the short, all other things being equal. Think about this from a public betting perspective. Both the teams are 1-2. They both have kind of interesting offenses and not necessarily very, very good defenses. All other things being equal, I'll lay the points under 3 with the home team. That's kind of how public better thinks about it. So the fact that the sportsbook is willing to take that action and they haven't moved it to 3 tells you that no serious bettor has really come in on the West Virginia side of this to pop it out to 3, and that they're willing to take the money. That's a big endorsement of the Kansas side of this game. I still think I'd probably rather have West Virginia. And so for that reason, I'm laying out of the side. And I'm instead going to do what I should have done last week, that I explicitly said on the podcast, the right side to be on in this game, in this Pitt game. It's the over. You should bet the over. Here's my clever monologue where I'm going to do something completely different, even though I know what the right side of the game is. So I am going to follow through on that this week and take the over 56, because I think neither one of these defenses are very good. I think West Virginia's defense may actually be getting even worse. And I'm expecting a lot of points.
I like it. All right. Could get pointsy. I like saying pointsy. All right. 1:00, ESPN Plus. Iowa State in Ames, Iowa, hosting Arkansas State. Iowa State taking off last week. They're back and spent 2 weeks enjoying their win over Iowa, getting the Cy-Hawk, winning the El Assico. Very exciting for them. This one, though, Arkansas State, not very good. Despite being, 2-1? Yeah, somehow. I didn't realize that. Iowa State currently a 21.5 point favorite. Total at 51.5 across the board. Okay. Let me run through everything. SP Plus has Iowa State minus 22.9. TSU has Iowa State minus 15. FEI Iowa State minus 22.3. Beta Iowa State minus 30.06. Parker has Iowa State minus 20.24. Room 44 has Iowa State minus 22.3. Kelly Ford gives Iowa State an 88% chance to win. It's all Iowa State, somewhere between 15 and 30. So, I went back and had this weird thought of what my brain told me. Doesn't Matt Campbell usually win big in non-conference game number 3, which is usually directly after Iowa? So I went back and looked. Typically, they blow their opponents out. Typically. 2020 aside, obviously, they didn't have 3 non-conference games. Their average margin of victory is 39-11. Yeah, they lost at Ohio last year. The other weird year was 2018, when their first game of the season was canceled due to weather, and they didn't play their third non-con until it was Drake Championship weekend. Okay. Otherwise, they pretty much blow out whoever at home. It's by a lot. that doesn't mean anything. It's not data that you go and say, hey, that means that you should. I'm just saying the point of this is Iowa State should win big. I really think they should. They don't need to. They're not going to run it up on purpose. Will Arkansas State let them actually put up? Is Arkansas State going to let them run it up, or are they going to put up enough of a fight to keep this within that score? Based off all of that, because of how much Iowa State usually wins by, and because they usually let the opponent score some, I know this is wild to say for an Iowa State team. I think they probably will cover this, but I don't like taking any team by this much. And especially not, like if it's Georgia versus insert G5, whatever, like sure. This isn't a shot at Iowa State. I don't want to take a Big 12 team by this much and not. Like Arkansas State's bad, but not like bad. However, I am going to take the over 51.5. I do think Iowa State covers this, but just in case Arkansas State does just enough offensively to actually like keep it close, I think this game goes over. I think Iowa State, again, I think Iowa State could just cover the whole score by themselves. Like, that's happened multiple times. They had a game where they put, like, I think it was, I forget who it was. They won, like, 71-14. It was insane. It's just, why not? I'm going to take the over 51.5. I just, you guys know me. I don't like taking any side when it's 3 touchdowns or more. That's an immediate stay away from me. So, just for this, I'm taking the over. Brett. No
yeah,
way.
I mean,
is it Brett? Yeah, Brett.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not betting Iowa State minus 21.5 on this side of 21 at least, and I don't know how I feel. It feels like 52.5. I'd probably lean under. I know that sounds silly, but I like taking unders on sides where I don't believe one of the sides can keep up in terms of scoring. And I think Iowa State's defense is pretty solid. I think all around they're a pretty good team. North Dakota, actually, I know people are going to look at that and say, oh, they only beat them, 21-3, raised for concern. Maybe the offense isn't very good. North Dakota is a very good team. Not North Dakota State. North Dakota is a very good football team, like legitimately good. We'll see how that plays out later on, but I do think that they're like legit. But either way, sidetracking here. Arkansas State's offense has just not been all that good. It hasn't been as good as it was last year. Missing their starting center, who's an all Sun Belt guy, has really hurt this team. He was the middle, the leader, calling everything out, protections, all that's kind of gone out the window. I cannot bring myself to take the hook with Iowa State. So I guess I go Arkansas State plus 21.5. That is not in my bank account. Or I'm not betting real US dollars on that, but I just can't take 21.5. And I also like this to not be a super high scoring game because I just don't trust Arkansas State to score. But I can't take under a key number of 52.
Chase?
Yeah, this is fun because it's going to be directly in opposition to a lot of what Phillip said. So when I was prepping for the picks this week, I just, for whatever reason, I had ringing in my head Phillip's refrain about how Matt Campbell doesn't take non-conference all that seriously. So I went to go do a little digging on that. And what I came out of that with is Iowa State is just so much more vanilla schematically and more conservative in its game approach and play calling when it plays these non-conference games. And I think that plays to an under, maybe more so than a spread play. And so, unsurprisingly, I found some good trends for Iowa State in home non-conference games. The under following that UND game is now 5-1 in Iowa State's last 6 games in those situations, home non-conference games. So I actually like the under 51.5 here. It's what I'm going to be on. Like Brett said, no legal tender is at remotely in play in this one. And I'll tell you what does scare me off a little bit is I was on the Michigan side of Arkansas State's game last week. I did have real money on that, and Michigan, employing some of the same ideas that Iowa State's offense does. They're just marching right up and down the field on Arkansas State all day, every day. And the only reason they didn't, end up scoring more points is because Michigan doesn't have a quarterback and they kept turning the ball over in increasingly stupid ways. And then on top of that, Arkansas State tags a bunch of points on in garbage time. So if you're talking about an under perspective on this game, a bunch of garbage time Arkansas State points, does scare me off a little bit, but I don't like any of the 4 potential bets here. So give me, I guess, the under 51.5 by default.
This is a sicko game. If you have real money on this, you're either an Iowa State fan or you need to seek help for probably a gambling addiction. I'm just, I'm sorry to be judgmental. I don't have a segue there, so we'll just move on to the next game. Okay, coming in. I'm excited for this one. This one I am excited for. 2:30, FS1 in Lubbock, Texas Tech hosting Arizona State. Arizona State's first conference game as a member of the Big 12 going to Texas Tech. This one feels like Texas Tech feels like they should have rivalries with Arizona and Arizona State. We would just say it's all West Texas, right? Like that it would be the gag when Texas Tech, it's all just West Texas, just letting tumbleweeds rolling from one town to the other, following them along. Like it just feels like a game that this is the only ones where I'm like, yeah, these feel like conference games. I know they're not, but it's just West Texas, the desert of Arizona. I get it. I'm excited for this one. This one should be a fun game. I'm seriously like, I cannot wait for this one because I don't know what's going to happen. Texas Tech at home, currently a 3-point favorite. Total in this one is 60.5. There's a few other numbers there if we want to shop around. If anyone wants the total, we'll get to that in a second. I think I've lost the thread of who goes first because we got out of my normal pattern. So, Brett, I'm going to let you go first this time. What would you like, sir?
Okay. First and foremost, I was impressed with both teams this week. I know that UNT isn't much of a threat. I was very public about how I liked UNT to possibly pull off an upset. And I've very few times in my life have I been more objectively wrong about something. Texas Tech absolutely steamrolled them. And the problem is, I don't know if there's a few teams in the nation that voluntarily released or are required to by the conference, their injury report. And I don't know if Texas Tech is just over-reporting every guy that has a bump and a bruise and sat out one session at practice. Florida is the other team that does that, but they appeared on the surface to be very, very injured. And a lot of key players are hurt. Taj Brooks being one of them. He actually left week 2, played week 3, and then left week 3 again. So that's a little bit of a concern for me that there's some sort of nagging underlying injury there. And I don't think I have a team in my Phil Steele preview magazine that I have more lines through players designating them as out for the season as Texas Tech. They've really been struck by the injury bug. But again, a lot of those guys I expected to be out last week did play. We'll see if they play again this week. Again, don't know if it's just over-reporting injuries or what. But either way, pretty impressed with these two teams. Arizona State so far, pretty good start. I did not expect much from them, and they've been pretty solid. But they kind of feel like a team to me that just there's always one or two teams a year that like is just perpetually in one-score games, and they can't get out of those. And of course, they blew out Wyoming. Wyoming's pretty terrible this year. But one-score game, Mississippi State, very tight, very fun one-score game at Texas State, pardon me. And I think they're in for another one here. I see 3.5s on the board. I'm probably buying those 3.5s on Arizona State on the road. I'm not saying they're going to beat Texas Tech. I'm sitting here wearing a Texas Tech hat for those that can't see me, which of course everybody, we're audio medium here. But I do like Arizona State to keep this one pretty close. And if you're giving me 3 in the hook, that's the way I'm going.
I do have a hook for you. So Arizona State plus 3.5 is yours. Chase?
Yeah, I don't know why Texas Tech is favored in this. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I would guess that it's market conditions, right? Because Arizona State, for us, right, for people that watch Big 12 and are like locked into Tempe every week, like, yeah, they've looked really good. I don't know how much the average college football bettor has watched Arizona State. It's probably not that much. So if you lay, let's say, a true number on this, just to, pull something down out of the sky, let's say Arizona State should be minus 1.5, right? You're taking a lot of Texas Tech action, would be my guess. And so this is sort of just a very vanilla, let's not draw too much attention, home team -3 kind of situation. The problem with that is, I haven't seen anything that says Texas Tech should lay advantage against this Arizona State team, which really seems pretty competent. Like they've got some really strong, the run game's good. I like what they have shown us so far. They get 2 extra days of rest and prep for this because they played in San Marcos Thursday night last week. So this is not just Arizona State +3 for me. This is Arizona State money line. This is outright, and this is your Big 12 big bet of the week because Arizona State's just the better team thus far to the season.
Well, we're going to test the curse, I guess, here this week, because I agree. Here's what's interesting is the numbers or the projections all go for Texas Tech. Everybody's on Texas Tech side. Anywhere from Parker has Texas Tech minus 1.51. The highest is Beta with Texas Tech minus 11.67. Most of them are like 3s and 5s. Kelly Ford has Texas Tech with a 61% chance to win. To the injury stuff you mentioned, Brent, we've talked about this every week. Like, they do have a lot of injuries, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, which is kind of why it was impressive to see them. Again, North Texas isn't good, but like, they're not that bad. The offense isn't that terrible. Texas Tech just had a wild game. Backup running back Cameron Valdez is out for the season with a knee injury. I think Taj Brooks is still a little banged up. 3 linebackers are out. 1 more is questionable. 1 DB out. 3 more questionable. I don't trust the defense. Arizona State's run defense has been good this season. If Taj Brooks is banged up, and Texas Tech goes as Taj Brooks goes, like it just does. And if Arizona State can limit Taj Brooks and limit Texas Tech's run game and put it on Baron Morton, like Arizona State's winning this game outright. Texas Tech is tied for 73rd with 5 turnovers this season. They forced 5, but 3 of those were against North Texas. So again, that feels more of an outlier. Turning the ball over 5 times feels more like Texas Tech than forcing 3 against North Texas. Also, Arizona State gets edge rusher Prince Dorba back this week, who is supposed to be one of their best defensive players. I think that's going to matter in this game. Arizona State's tied for 10th nationally with 7 takeaways on the season. They're tied for first with Coastal Carolina for defensive touchdowns with 3. They've only turned the ball over once this year. I know what all the metrics say, and I know they're all on Texas Tech. I don't care. I know the consensus curse is a thing. I still don't care. I think Arizona State is one of those teams, like, Arizona State's going to be one of those teams who's going to be so frustrating to have to play because they're not going to be more talented than anybody else the rest of the season, but they're going to be well coached. They're going to be a pain. They seem to know how to handle themselves in close and weird games and figure out how to hang on to win. I trust ASU in this spot more than I trust Texas Tech. We all agree. Arizona State minus 3.5. Possible 3.5. All right. One consensus that is never a curse is when everyone in the room is wearing Charlie Hustle, because that gear is fantastic. You can all agree with it. Everyone's comfortable. Everyone's looking at each other going, that's a good shirt. That's a good shirt. That sweater is awful. Awesome. This is wonderful. Everyone loves it. Everyone loves it. At my house, who's got some, everyone I have talked to and sent gear to has been like, this is comfortable and these are cool. So you want to do yourself a favor as a fan of any Big 12 team and go to charliehustle.com, load up that cart, and do a little shopping. Whether you're a West Virginia fan, Utah fan, Arizona State, Iowa State, UCF, they've got all 16 Big 12 teams. They've got great gear for every single one of them. Some of that stuff's on sale, and the sales are always good. If it's not on sale, use our promo code 101215, TEN1215, gets you 15% off all non-sale items. Okay, if you haven't checked out the Big 12 gear they have, it's fantastic. The old Big 8 stuff, it's great. They love the Big 12. It's why they've done this relationship with the 12. It's why they put out so much Big 12 gear. It's why they made sure they had the new schools in time for this summer. They love the Big 12. They love the Big 12 schools. We love them. They put out good stuff, and I cannot emphasize enough, it is very comfortable. So go to charliehustle.com, use that promo code 101215, 15% off all non-sale items. Thank you again to Charlie Hustle for supporting this show and every show in this network. We appreciate you. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, you know, to check you have the tickets in your wallet first before you drive 2 hours to the big game. Seriously, you had one job. Now the closest you'll get to the 50-yard line is parking lot D. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
All right. It is arguably the Big 12 game of the weekend. It is featuring 2 ranked teams, 2 top 15 ranked teams, and 2 7th-year quarterbacks. I'm loving all the OSU and Utah fans like, your quarterback's old. It's the Spider-Man meme of 2 Spider-Mans pointing at each other. Like, yes, both quarterbacks are old men. They are. Both should be having real big boy jobs now, but they're still getting to play quarterback in college football, and I'm not going to tell anybody to leave if they have the eligibility and ability to do so. So, Oklahoma State hosting Utah. It's not technically a first-time matchup. They actually played once like way back in the day, but it does feel like a first-time matchup because it's the first time somehow that Kyle Whittingham and Mike Gundy will actually face off on a football field, and that's incredible because they're two of the longest tenured active coaches in college football, both just shy of Kirk Ferentz, who will apparently just never retire and will just live forever as the head coach of Iowa. This game is at 3 p.m. Remember, all games in Central Time, God's time, on Fox, on the big network. I'm so excited for this one. And I'm also, as an OSU fan, absolutely terrified. Utah now a 1.5 point favorite. OSU opened as a favorite. Total in this one is all the way up to 53.5. I see some 54s as well. Chase, you are up first, sir. What would you like here?
Yeah, I actually want to open with a question, which I guess is more for you, Phillip, but I'll take input from anybody. How many opposing road venues in the former Pac-12 do you think are as hard to play in as Stillwater?
How many Pac-12 venues?
How many former conference road games would be as challenging from a crowd perspective?
I mean,
as that little backlot.
Brett's the guy to ask this about because I have not been to any of them, so I'm curious Brett's perspective here.
I only ever got to one Pac-12 game in person, which ironically now classifies as a Big 12 game in Arizona State. But just from reputation, and having seen them on television, just heard around, two, in my opinion, and that's Oregon and Washington, now two Big 10 teams. And feel free for those that are pulling for other ones, chime in, let me know. Utah is definitely on that, but that's their home venue.
Right.
I actually think Utah might be, them and Oregon can punch it out for most daunting former Pac-12 venue because it's pretty close. Yeah, probably two.
So that's kind of where I was too. And I was thinking maybe like on a good year, you maybe throw USC in there, but it's Oregon and Washington. And I wondered how that would play into Utah's season as a whole coming into the Big 12, but especially a game like this, because I think it's possible that Utah wins the Big 12 and is convincingly the best team in the conference, but that they also get rocked in this game in particular. And that kind of, shapes me toward my pick here, which is, I like the Oklahoma State side of this for a couple of reasons. One of which is you always like to bet teams that open as a favorite and then get flipped to a dog. That's usually a profitable spot in both college football and the NFL. I think I was pretty skeptical of Alan Bowman when Phillip and I did the preseason quarterback show, and I think I had a right to be. I think he's been pretty solid so far. I think coming into this game, like given the status of Cam Rising and the status of Alan Bowman, like I feel a little better about Bowman right now. And like they were, am I looking at this right? Is Oklahoma State back to being a favorite again? When did that happen? This is great podcasting.
Nope.
I know, but
no, I have Utah as either -1 or -1.5.
Okay, cool. So I want the Oklahoma State. I don't know what I'm looking at here on VSiN, but I'll take the Oklahoma State +1.5 because I think they're going to win outright.
Okay.
Oh, no. Oklahoma State just flipped about 5 points while we've been recording this.
What?
I was going to say
I just refreshed
what
my
the hell
odds
just
board.
happened?
They're now a 2.5 point favorite.
So what that probably means is Cam Rising
is not playing. Yeah.
Is not playing, and it happened pretty much while we've been podcasting.
Because the line shifted originally when they made the announcement that Cam Rising is going to play. Now, and I love all the national podcasts I've listened to this week who are all like, does any of you trust Kyle Whittingham to be honest with us? And they're all like, no. So the expectation was we really don't know who's going to play. But if this line is flipping again, someone got some information.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that any other news would flip the line 3 to 4 points like that in a short amount of time. So that would be my guess, that there was some kind of Cam Rising related news. Either way, I'm taking Oklahoma State. If it's -1 or +1, that doesn't change my handicap.
Okay. Well, I've still got I've got 1.5, so I'll just flip that for you real quick. I got a few things to run through here. I always have a lot of OSU stats. For some strange reason, I can't imagine why. Let's run through the numbers real quick because they are all super close. SP Plus is OSU by 0.3. TSU is Utah by 2.5. FEI is OSU by 2.1. Beta is Utah by 3.22. Parker is OSU by 3.21. Room 44 is OSU by 2.1. Kelly Ford is OSU with a 59% chance. It's expected to be a close game. Since taking over as the head coach of Oklahoma State in 2005, Mike Gundy is 14-14 as a home underdog. The only P4 schools with a better record is Miami, LSU, and Clemson in that time. Now, since 2016, Oklahoma State is 9-1 straight up and against the spread as a home underdog. Mike Gundy has won 7 straight home games against top 25 teams and 13 of the last 17 going back to 2016. Mike Gundy's Cowboys are now 18-8 in one-score finishes since the start of the 2020 season and have won 6 of their past 7. They are 45-22 during Gundy's tenure in one-score games. The stats scream OSU, but if Cam Rising's back, I'm very concerned. But now I'm starting to think he's not actually going to play. If OSU continues to struggle to run the ball, you can't expect a performance from Alan Bowman like he had against Tulsa every week. And you can't expect Utah to make the same number of mistakes that Arkansas did if Utah gets up big. OSU's run game. OSU is 124th in yards allowed before contact at 0.91. Shout out to Tom Fernelli for that one. This is not a Ollie Gordon issue. Ollie Gordon's still getting like 2.3 yards after contact. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you're getting hit at or before the line of scrimmage, it's not like you have time to actually get yourself up to speed and get ready to make guys miss. The issue has been with the offensive line, the tight ends, and the fullbacks of teams are loading the box. They're refusing to allow Ollie Gordon to beat them. Even in Tulsa in the third quarter when they're down big numbers, was still like, nah, we're not going to let Ollie beat us. And so... And the fullbacks and the tight ends have just not done a good enough job. And the offensive line is just there's somebody there every time. And there's even the hole is filled. So maybe OSU's figuring out a scheme how to fix that. I don't know if they will by this week. As an Oklahoma State fan, I hate this game and I don't want to pick OSU because it terrifies me to pick OSU in this game. It does. It also feels very much like an OSU kind of game that they are supposed to win because I promise you this is the biggest game on the schedule for OSU this year. With OU not on the schedule anymore, they sold out the whole season. Like, trust me, every ticket is sold out. But this was one of the games that sold out the fastest because every OSU fan's like, no. This is this year's, we want to win this one game. We're all going to be there. We wish it was a night game, but it's fine that's at 3:00. Hope Utah's ready for the heat. All that said, now that OSU has flipped to a favorite and isn't a dog, throw all those dog stats out because it's a whole new day. I don't care. That's just the reality of it. I am actually going to take, I see a 54.5. I'm going to take the under in this one. Especially if Cam Rising's not playing, that offense, we saw that offense the second half against Baylor and the first half against Utah State. I don't trust Utah's offense. And OSU, like, I get what they did against Tulsa. They've leaned more toward the under this season. It's a little bit weird. Man, this line just keeps going up. Oh, man. Okay. Well, it was 1.5 when we looked at it. So, Brett, you go ahead, man. It's all you now.
Doing a quick refresh of the odds page here because if it's still on the march, I tried to do some digging for you guys.
It's still moving.
Still moving.
Got OSU by 2.5, 2.5, and
yeah, that's not going to last long.
The level set here is that there is no public information about Cam Rising that I see, which means either somebody knows something and has come in and slammed this, or probably more likely at this point, just this is some kind of group syndicate sharp sharp action that has come in and blasted the number so hard that the book is now flipping it back toward its original position, which was around Oklahoma State -2.
Yeah, that's actually, before they were a favorite here, I was going to bring up the timing of that movement in that, it was Utah open, the favorite, and then, or I should say reopen, because this was a look headline, and then Oklahoma State was favored. And then once they said Cam Rising's playing, then it moved back to Utah. But I do think that the market is higher on Oklahoma State than Utah, with or without Rising. And the only thing I could find was Tailgate Tent saying Cam Rising is the bane of my existence, and a bunch of people quoting the movement below it. So I don't know if he knows or if he was, like you said, part of the betting groups that hit it. Either way, he is a market mover, nonetheless. But this game, outside of market movement, look, Oklahoma and Texas have accounted for 11 of Oklahoma State's 42 losses in the past 10 seasons. That is about a quarter of them. Those two teams no longer play in the Big 12. Now, I think that Mike Gundy is perpetually the most underrated coach in the entire country. It's just consistent output. He has twice the number of 10-win seasons Stillwater than the number of 4 or more loss seasons, 10-5 edge, since 2008. This is a guy that wins and does not a lot else besides winning. And now that the two teams that are accounting for 25% of his career losses in the last 10 years are no longer around. So you're bringing a team like Utah that everybody's expecting to be the cream of the crop, the top of the conference, or at least one of the contenders in it. And I still like Oklahoma State here, even though we see the movement already 2.5. I would have loved to take the plus side of that, but I'll take the minus side. I'll take -2. I see on the board. At least here in Ohio, bet 365 with -2, bet Rivers -2. That's where I'm taking here, because I do think, with or without Cam Rising, I think Oklahoma State's just a better football team.
Well, look, I'm not going to make you take a 2 and Chase got a 1.5 just because it changed between him talking and you talking. So,
those the rules. I think he just gets the better number.
I swear, you know what? I will stand firm on the 2, because that's what I'm looking at. And if they lose, if that pushes, or they, well, yeah, I guess that's the only real way to lose a bet here. So I'll stand on the 2. I'll take it, because right now I could open up my phone and get a 2.
I think that would be the most incredible moment in the history of the picks episode for 10-12. That would be incredible.
That would be something. That would be something. All right, that game. Ooh, I don't think that's a game I could just sit and watch. I may have to occupy myself while it's on and just like be watching it while I'm also doing something else, or I might go crazy. Okay, let's move on down to a non-conference game. Another one. We already talked about Iowa State and Arkansas State. We've got another one in the Big 12 this weekend.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. Time is luxury, which is why Polestar spent so much time designing the Polestar 3, their luxury electric performance SUV. It's designed to go further with up to 315 miles of range and immerse you in a unique listening experience powered by 25 speakers. Your favorite daily news podcast has never sounded better. All to make the time you spend behind the wheel of Polestar 3 the best time of your day. Book your test drive at Polestar.com.
TCU. It's a rivalry game. It's the Iron Skillet. I did some digging. The tradition of the trophy, the Iron Skillet, is said to have started in 1946 when an SMU fan was frying frog legs before a game. A TCU fan took offense and suggested the winner of the game should get the skillet. I don't know if that's what really happened or not. That's very like folksy. Someone has just kind of made up something that sounds like it might have happened back in 1946. But we'll roll with it. TCU leads this all-time series 53-42-7, including winning the last 2. This will be the last one in Dallas for a while. They play again, I think, next year, the year after in Fort Worth, and then there is a hiatus in this series. Again, with these rivalries, in non-con rivalries, taking these hiatuses. Y'all, you don't have to like each other. Just play the game. Just do it. We don't like each other. You're not supposed to. It's a rivalry. Just play the game. Play the game. Just play the game. Play the game. We're going to play a game against what? South Alabama? Wyoming? You want to go up to Laramie? That works out a lot for people. What? A MAC team? Just, anywho. Okay, I'm done. TCU currently a 3-point favorite on the road at SMU. Total at 58.5. I believe it is, my turn to go first here. Let's Let's run through the numbers. SP Plus, SMU by 0.1. TCU by 0.5. FEI, TCU by 2.8. Beta, SMU by 5.12. Parker, TCU by 4.61. Room 44, TCU by 2.8. Kelly Ford gives SMU a 55% chance to win this. All I'm going to say is this. TCU. BYU went to Dallas and beat SMU. If you can't do that, just shut it down for the year. Because you don't play BYU, and they will then have bragging rights over you. Are you going to let a team that was picked to finish significantly lower than you in the conference standings to go and beat your rival on the road, and you can't do it? I'm taking TCU -3. Brett?
Yeah, like you said, the penultimate battle for the Iron Skillet goes on hiatus. But because TCU opted out of that rivalry, that may be a permanent hiatus. Hopefully not. We'll see. It's pretty clear that Preston Stone is just not fully recovered from last year's injury. It happened really late in the year. It was horrific. I'm very squeamish. I do not watch that video. Don't love it. Kevin Jennings is going to get the start here. I'm not impressed with him. He's just not a good passer. He adds a little bit of a dual threat element, but not enough to be, this isn't SMU that we've seen for the past half decade with Preston Stone and the other quarterbacks that have come through that system. Like, they're not the same. And like, speaking of teams that I don't think are very good, SMU, I just don't think they're a very good football team this year. Now, it is interesting, Phillip, when you're throwing out all those rating systems and how they're making this line. And it's interesting to hear the models that are aggressive this year in changing and the models that are very conservative. And the conservative change in power rating is a little bit old school, and I think quickly becoming outdated. If you can get more aggressive and take a better temperature on these teams early in the year, obviously that's the name of the game. But if you more aggressively move your own sets of ratings, you're going to be ahead of the market probably at least the first half of the year, maybe even to week 8. I've been taking a more aggressive approach on my numbers here. I downgraded SMU big time. I would not be favoring them by 5. I would not be favoring them by any. This is TCU for me. I can find... I don't like paying the extra 24 cents at FanDuel, but I can find a 2.5. It is juiced. If you want me to take the full 3, I'll take the full 3 on there. Just because it's 3s across the board. Aside from that 1, 2.5, but again, it is juiced. I just don't think SMU is very good. I don't know that TCU is great, but if we're just comparing 2 quarterbacks, I think Josh Hoover can move the football a lot better than Kevin Jennings. I think the defenses are generally comparable. SMU's defense is not as good as it was last year. It doesn't have the same stud 4 horsemen on the defensive line that did last year. I just don't think they're going to be able to slow down TCU's offense. And to be honest, I think TCU beats them, and I think they beat them pretty darn good. I don't know that this game is really all that close.
I will give you the 2.5. I will take it as well. And the rule here is if you can bet it, you can have it.
There we go.
Chase?
I agree that there is a strong possibility that TCU beats the crap out of SMU. I definitely think that's possible. And like, to go back to something I've referenced in previous pick shows, I actually have a lot of SMU stock coming into this year. I had several positions on like SMU to win the ACC, SMU over the win total, SMU to make the playoff, like all these positions that look like it is just, I can start writing grocery lists on the back of those tickets. They look so bad at this point. The Preston Stone thing is interesting because the fact that Preston Stone is going to be benched for this game, and they announced it a while ago, right? It's probably 10 or 11 days ago at this point. And SMU had a bye week, one of those weird, the season actually, week 1 was in August, so there's an extra week this season. So a lot of teams have 2 bye weeks, and a lot of them have them scheduled for mid-September. This weird week 3 bye week that SMU got. They've got extra time ahead of this game to work in the quarterback, right? So I do think if the theory on the game and what's going on with SMU is they should have lost to Nevada in week 0. They were lucky to get out of that one. They get dominated by BYU in week 2. Preston Stone is hurt. If you now have effective quarterback play, maybe SMU's roster plays a little bit closer to its talent level. I think that's a plausible way to think about this game. I've already lost too much money on SMU in real life and hypothetically on this show betting on SMU in other spots. I'm not going back to the well with SMU, but I am a little less certain about the outcome of this game than you guys are. So I'm going to stick to the total here. Going back to, I want to say 2008 in the Iron Skillet game, the over is 11-4. So I am going to trust that TCU's offense does enough here with Josh Hoover, and that the SMU offense looks a little bit more respectable, and we get over the 58, which is the number that I saw.
I've got 58.5 across the board.
I'll take 58.5.
All right. Love it. I forgot to mention this game is at 4:00 on the CW. Hey, look, we passed the hour mark. I told y'all. It doesn't matter. We've just spent more time on games as opposed to we got to get through quick. But that's fine because I enjoy talking about the games, I don't have to just burn through them. All right, next one on the list at 7:00 in Boulder, Colorado, Folsom Field, Colorado. Their first conference game back as members of the Big 12, hosting Baylor on Fox. The Buffs are currently about a 1.5 point favorite. Total in this one is at 51.5. Brett, you were up first, sir. What would you like?
Boy, the range of possible outcomes on this game is pretty vast, in my opinion. There's a lot of ways this could go. Baylor could beat them soundly. Colorado could beat them soundly. Or it could be a wacky game that comes down to a bounce or a theoretical coin toss. If you're just looking at what Baylor's done this year, it's pretty easy to be impressed with the Air Force win. But Air Force is probably the most hurt team in the entire country, more in Texas Tech, and they're just not as good as they've been. But on the flip side, my biggest question, and it is a big question that I'm sure is going to get me yelled at quite a bit. Guys, I don't know how much longer Shedeur Sanders wants to play in a Colorado Buffaloes uniform. He's thrown his offensive linemen under the bus time and time and time again. And I know he's a smart guy. I know Shedeur Sanders is a smart person. He knows how to market himself, and he knows where he's stepping. He's very intentional when he speaks. He has to know that if you're throwing the offensive line under the bus, that you still have, at the time, 10 more games to play behind them. And if you keep throwing them under the bus, they are not going to want to block for you. They do not care. They'd rather see them get crushed for saying, hey, they were no good. How often did Dylan Raiola get hit? They're going to let him go. So I kind of wonder how much longer Shedeur wants to sit back there and get teed off on. Now, that's very speculative, and I'm not placing wagers with real dollars on that kind of speculation. That's silly. I don't have a lot of data points, but it does visibly look like Baylor's defense is a lot better under Dave Aranda. And on the flip side, actually, Colorado's defense has been solid, dare I say, pretty good. They've been all right. So I think this is a defensive battle between two teams. I'd probably lean under the total if I had to actually pick a real wager that we have. I think Baylor is probably the better team here, probably wins, but I don't want to leave it to chance with Shedeur Sanders throwing for 450 yards and Travis Hunter, absolutely lighting this team up because he's the best individual player by head and shoulders. So I think I'm going to go under the total because I think these are two defenses that people are not going to look at and respect very much, but I do think that they're very improved and, dare I say, both solid to good. Somewhere in that range.
Right. Which side did you take?
We'll take under 51.5. I don't love betting under 52, but I'm not touching this side with a 100-foot pole.
Okay. Chase?
Not a lot to add. It's a full cosign on everything Brett just said, including the discussion about Shedeur and how long he's going to play, which we touched on last week. I also think this is a very high variance game, which could go in a lot of directions. I lean Baylor on the side, and for a while I was going to force myself to take Baylor plus the short number. But I also like the under 51.5. Baylor is a stone under team so far this year. I talked at length about how much I liked the Baylor Air Force under last week. That was a pretty easy real life casher for me. Colorado, because of the market expectations about what their defense would be, has played as an under team too so far this year because the defense it's not awesome, but like Brett said, it's decent and it's better than what the expectations would be. So Colorado actually 2-1 to the under as well. These teams combined 5-1 to the under so far this year. I will continue to play that sort of market mismatch and go under 51.5.
I lean towards Baylor in this game. I won't run through everybody. 5 out of our 7 lean Baylor. Beta and Parker are the only ones who lean Colorado, and Parker's is by 0.91. From a totals projection, you guys are pretty much on the right side. I'm curious about Baylor's defense. And if how good it's looked is a little bit of smoke and mirrors. It didn't look good against Utah until Cam Rising went out. Air Force can't throw the ball at all. Baylor has only defended a pass on 27% of their defensive snaps this season. They have not played a passing attack for a whole game like Colorado will throw at them. Now, we've talked about this time and time again. Colorado cannot run the ball. Colorado does not want to run the ball. They do not care to run the ball. They're not even really going to try to run the ball. They're just going to throw. Baylor's offense has started slow in games so far this season. Again, they didn't do anything against Utah till late. They didn't do anything against Air Force in the second half. I'm not entirely sure who's starting. I don't know if we're going to get Sawyer Robertson for another week. I don't know if we're going to get DeQuan Finn back in there. I want to pick Baylor. I actually kind of think Colorado might be the right side here. Because I'm afraid Baylor is the team out of everyone who's played 3 games that I actually trust the least based off of what some of the numbers are telling me. Like, I don't trust West Virginia and Kansas because I've seen enough of them not to trust them. I'm not sure I trust what I've seen from Baylor based off of some of the data that I just ran through. So I don't like taking a side here. I really don't. I don't want to consensus curse us all with taking the undergood with you. With Colorado at just a 1.5 point favorite, I'm basically picking Colorado to win this game. I think they're going to be able to do enough with the passing game. Baylor's going to start slow enough that Colorado can eke out a win here over Baylor and turn the fire up on Dave Aranda's seat a few notches. All right. Last Big 12 game, and of course we'll pick a non-Big 12 game as well. This one is going to be fun. If you can stay up for this one, 9:30 p.m. God's Time kickoff on ESPN, Kansas State, number 13 on the road at surprise team in the Big 12, also at 3-0, BYU out there in Provo. Kansas State currently a 6.5 point favorite. Total in this one is at 48. Chase, you are up first, sir. What would you like?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have a good feel for a lot of the games this week, if you can't tell here. But this one is one where I actually am kind of interested in a side. I don't think I'm going to have real life money on it, but a side does jump out to me, which is what I think is the contrarian side here with BYU. Kansas State is going to have a day of extra rest coming into this, and they just put together what's clearly their best early performance of the year, just really thumping Arizona last Friday night. And so now you have a team that was essentially a co-favorite for the Big 12 coming into the season, coming off their best performance, and they're a full road touchdown favorite against BYU. We've already seen, let me rephrase, they were a full touchdown favorite against BYU, and that number has now shaded down to 6.5 because of early market action. So I'm gonna follow the steam here and take BYU, even though it is, getting 6.5 and getting 7 are very different enterprises. But I do think BYU plus the points is probably the undervalued side. And like I said, I do think it's contrarian. I think Kansas State, I loved what they did against Arizona. They looked awesome. But that's the only 60 minutes so far this season they've looked awesome. And with Kleiman, it's always possible you have a situation where, hey, we've now put it together. Like we fixed the kinks, we put it together. We're going to look like Kansas State now. I just, updated an article on the BetMGM blog about how Kansas State over the last 6 years, I think, is the number one team against the spread in all of FBS in terms of ROI. So you're always kind of taking your life in your own hands when you bet against Kansas State. But I like the BYU side of this. I like how it profiles, and I'll go ahead and stick with that, even though I'm getting the lesser number at 6.5.
Looking through our numbers, I won't run through them all. They all favor Kansas State. The smallest amount is Parker with Kansas State minus 5.21. The biggest is 3 of them all have Kansas State minus 12.1. BYU is playing at home for the first time since week 1 after back-to-back weeks on the road. Shout out to Joe Wheat of the Hype Train podcast. That's our BYU show here in the 1012 network. Last year's 3-0 start, BYU is outgained by 23 yards. This year, BYU has outgained their opponents by 616. I do think that last year's schedule was a more difficult one to start 3-0 against, but I'm starting to wonder if this is a better BYU team than we thought they would be coming into the season, period. They may actually be better than we even thought after we've started 3-0. I'm going to run through a few stats here, which is interesting. Kansas State, under Chris Kleiman, is 40-21 against the spread, 23-9 against the spread as a favorite. However, Kansas State is 0-4 in their last 4 against the spread as a road favorite. BYU as a home dog is 5-1 against the spread since 2019. Since 2019, BYU is 15-17 straight up in games that kick off before 6 p.m. They are 29-6 straight up in games that kick off at or after 6 p.m. This has been discussed. It is a weird thing that BYU is just so much better at nighttime. Provo is weird. It's a different place to play. The atmosphere is for real. Chase, I think you're on the right side here, and I'm coming along with you. I think Kansas State wins, and I've been wrong on Kansas State twice now. I said don't bet against Kleiman, and it burned me, and then I thought Arizona would pull it. At this point, I'm just riding with the numbers in the recent years tell me BYU is the right side if you consistently pick them. And so in this situation, with what we've seen from BYU so far this year, I'm going to pick them. BYU plus 6.5. Brett?
With the trends, Phillip, I just add on top of that really fast. A lot of times you hear people say defense travels, but when you look at the Kansas State total splits, their defense does not actually travel that well, which I think ties into your ATS splits about how they're very strong in Manhattan, but they have quite a dip when they leave. They are a dead over team when they play Big 12 road games because I don't know what it is, but that's what the trends say, and that's certainly what we saw, I think, in that Tulane game as well, where it was such a dead over. There was so much offense in that game, and I would not be surprised. You and I are both taking the points with BYU, but if you're looking at a total, I think the over is really interesting too.
Oh, yeah, I agree. At what is it, 48.5? There's some 48s. The projections, lean more towards the over than the under. All right, Brett, hit it.
I don't like being on the opposing side here, but if we're talking about not trusting data points so far, that's BYU with me. In that, they beat SMU, who we sat here and kind of said, I don't know if they're that good this year. I mean, Stone's hurt as well. Wyoming, very bad football team to start this season. And then Southern Illinois, who's a good FCS team. Like, don't get me wrong here. They're fringe top 10 FCS, but they're still an FCS team. BYU is an official power conference team. You expect to win those games. I think this could be a dominant win for Kansas State. I know that they have moved off the 7-point number. I'm wondering when we have higher limits, not to date this in a couple of days, Thursday and Friday, if we don't see that climb back up to 7 just in the, hey, it's 6.5's on the board. We think Kansas State's a better team. Now, the defense not traveling is a very real and big concern. And if your defense isn't traveling with you and BYU is able to get points on the board, then yeah, I respect the position you guys are taking on BYU, no doubt. They may be without their top 2 running backs. LJ Martin, Hinckley Rapati, both are questionable officially as of today. Neither one played last week. That's why it's called cluster injury. And I don't know that BYU is a strong enough passing attack to be able to offset that. It's what Jake Retzlaff right now is starting. He's been fine. Hasn't been, singe your eyebrows off. Good. And they have Gary Bohannon on there. That's probably my most fun while sorting through depth charts in the preseason, seeing Gary Bohannon on BYU was like, oh, that's kind of fun. Little Easter egg there. I think Kansas State is just a better all-around team. You're giving me the 6.5 here. I just can't take BYU at 6.5. That overplay, Chase, I do like the call out there as well, but I think I have to roll with Kansas State minus 6.5. I think they're a team right now that understands the position that they're in the conference. BYU could be without a couple of key players in the offense. Give me Kansas State. I don't feel great about being on my island here, but I'll take the Wildcats minus 6.5.
All right. It's all yours, sir. All right. We wrap this show up the same way every week. We pick one non-Big 12 game, any game of your choosing, any line you want to take. And after I took a team total last week, y'all are welcome to it if you find something that just piques your fancy. I am up first. I do want to ask you guys, just for fun, what is a dumber conference game in your mind? Cal at Florida State or Stanford at Syracuse? Which one of this makes you go, what the are we doing here more?
Oh, it's Stanford to Syracuse, in my opinion. That's a dumb game. They've never met before. That's a really dumb game.
I think it's Cal Florida State. I think
love it.
I think culturally that's a weird game.
Have you seen Cal Twitter? They've been on fire, but Cal Twitter against Florida State Twitter this week might be the best, 2 fan bases going at it, and Cal's beating the absolute tar out of Florida State on Twitter. It's just
it's a tough moment to be a Florida State fan that has to talk trash to somebody, in fairness.
I bring this up because, and look, I have not done well with these, and so I'm torn between 2 games. I really like Oregon State as a 4-point favorite over Purdue. I don't know why they're not more of a favorite. I'm sure it has to do with the Oregon game. But I want to remind everyone, Cal went to Auburn and won. Why is Florida State a favorite against Cal right now? I don't understand that. And I get it's Florida State and it's Cal. I get it. But I don't know why Florida State is a favorite, even at home, against Cal. And I get Cal's got to travel all the way out there to Tallahassee, Florida. I'm just going to take Cal plus 2.5. Because it's a line I don't understand why the team, I understand why the team's favorite, but I'm also looking at what these 2 teams have done this year. Why? So I'll take Cal plus 2.5. It wouldn't shock me if the horrors continue for Florida State this week. Brett?
I'm going to deal with, by the way, really quick, Cal, quick note. At Auburn, back home, had to play a game. At Florida State, back home. That's a lot of travel for college kids. Anyway, I'm calling out. But I'm going to go fade a team that I've seen play in person, and I'm going to fade Florida Atlantic this week. They are not very good against the run. I don't think they're a very good football team in general. They're 65th in rush EPA. Shout out. You've mentioned him a couple times. Stats of War here for his awesome work on College Football Insiders. I use that thing religiously. They've also given up 5.6 a rush. It's 116th in the country. Just not very good. Army has been surprising this year in a very strong team. They're doing what they do best, line up and running it right down their throats. I think it's a mismatch here. I'm getting 5.5 with Army. I think Army kills them. I really do.
Florida Atlantic?
Yes.
Army's
Did I diagnose the wrong game?
Florida Atlantic's playing UConn.
And Army's playing
Rice. I'm sorry. I did this earlier. They played last week. Hold on. Let's restart here. Hang on. I literally
You want me to give you a couple minutes?
No, just I have it. It is Army this week because I have it like bet. Yeah. Are you guys able? Sorry,
you're going jocks versus nerds then. Army, Rice.
Yeah. Let's. Oh, now we're up to 6. I'll still take the 6 though. Army and Rice. My problem is Rice and FAU have a very similar colored logo next to them on our odds site here that I'm using, and that really tripped me up. Rice is not very good against the run either. I don't think they're a good team at all. Houston just wiped the floor with them. They're actually worse. They're 113th in rush EPA. Rice is. And Army's going to line up and just kill them. Either way, the analysis stands. I pulled the wrong numbers, but Army, I got 5.5 earlier in the week. This is in my bank count. I see 6 there. I'll take Army -6 against Rice.
All right.
Sorry
That's
that,
good.
guys.
No, it's all right. You wanted Army, and you still have Army, so you're good to go.
The analysis was right. The number was right. The logo and the team wrong. My fault, people.
Very, very patriotic. Army versus anybody, opponent doesn't matter.
Yeah, Army. God bless America. Chase.
Look, the non-Big 12 picks are not only are they fire, they're basically keeping my record afloat here early on. I think what are we? What are we at? 15-7, I think, in the MGM column. So pick it. Yeah, pretty hot start. Pick of the litter here. The one that I like the best this week, that I am testing the limits at all the outs across the land. Tulane -3. I love this bet. I am so heavy on Tulane this week. So they're playing Louisiana, which is a fine Sun Belt team. They're good, and the game is at Louisiana. But I just think the market is so soft on Tulane because Willie Fritz leaves. Pratt's gone. Oh, I guess that means they're bad now because they lost the source of what makes. But the roster's still good. A lot of the roster's still there, and the market's suppressed on them because the last 2 weeks they played Kansas State and Oklahoma. So you just lost 2 games. They were very competitive games. Probably should have beat Kansas State, but you just lose 2 games to 2 power conference schools. If they play, I don't know, like Nichols and Arkansas State, they're 3-0, and they're -6, -6.5 going to this game. Instead, they're -3. They're clearly the better team. I mean, I think Tulane's still in the mix. Well, if we were going strictly on like who's the best team, I think Tulane might be in the mix for the playoff. It would be hard to be the highest ranked team at the end at 11-2, even as American Conference champion. But I just think they're super undervalued in the spot, and at a clean -3, like I would bet this at a way worse price point. Like I would lay 5.5 here. I would think about laying 6. So I really like Tulane -3. Very strong. We had the Indiana bet last week, and I knew going in before that game even kicked off, I'm like, this is probably the last time we're going to get to bet Indiana for a while. They are about to just price themselves out because Indiana -3 at UCLA was stealing money, and this week they're -28.5. So that's kind of how that goes. I think we're getting a similarly great price with Tulane here. So give me the green wave.
Love it. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening all the way through. If you have, we appreciate it. Again, leave us a positive review if you would, wherever it is that you listen, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes. We would appreciate that. Brett, man, it's a pleasure to have you on again. This will not be your last appearance either, so it's been a fun time. Do me a favor. Where can everybody check out the work you do covering college football?
Yes, I appreciate you both for having me back on. Always love coming on the podcast. If you're looking for me, you can find me on X or Twitter, whatever you're calling it these days, at Road to CFB, ROADTOCFB. You can also find my college football travels on Instagram as well at Road to CFB. If you tail any of my picks, don't DM me on Instagram, guys. I get that a lot. That's not what that one's for. But if you're looking for my betting content, it's over at thelines.com, thelines.com.
Chase, you've got your latest best bets are up on BetMGM. Where can everybody find those?
Yeah, usually link to the bets on my Twitter, which is at Chase Kiddy. You'll also find whatever amalgamation of other observations about sports and life are on there. And then Square Bets podcast, where me and my dumb friends play the Circa Millions contest. And we are 7-3 so far after 2 weeks. So about 6,000 people in the contest. We are in 113th place, I believe. So going pretty good so far. I think we're just gonna miss that first quarter prize, but I like where we're at so far. Pretty good positioning.
Hey, you don't have to. You're too far out to like go for the worst one now. Like you've done too well.
Definitely for the first quarter, we've done far too well to go for the booby prize. But yeah, I mean, I think first place right now is 9-1. So I mean, if we really shot the moon here and just pull a 5-0 week 3 out of our butts, we might be in it. But other than that, I think we're just solidly in position to go on a nice run here for the full year standings.
Very good, very good. We will have the link to Chase's BetMGM bets in the show notes, as we always do, as well as links to our sponsor, Charlie Hustle here, and to the 1012 Network, so you can check out every show. We've got shows for everyone except Arizona, Colorado, and TCU. We're working on it. But if you're a fan of any of the other Big 12 teams, go to 1012network.com. Check out the show we have for them. They're all incredible. We would appreciate it. Y'all, enjoy the games this weekend. We will talk to you again on Monday to recap the weekend that was and look ahead to the week that will be.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.